They say every neighborhood has that one house. The house kids dare each other to walk past at night. The house adults cross the street to avoid. For me, that house stood at the end of a quiet street in rural Ohio. It looked normal enough from the outside: white paint, a small porch, overgrown grass. But inside, it was anything but normal. And what happened to me one night in that house still keeps me awake years later. This happened when I was 19. A group of friends and I were bored one summer night, driving around with no plans. Someone brought up the old Harris house, a place in town known for being haunted. It had been abandoned for over 30 years, ever since the Harris family left without explanation. No one knew why they left, but locals whispered about strange sounds, neighbors claiming to see lights flickering in empty windows, and even the silhouette of someone watching from the attic. My friends thought it would be fun to break in, just for laughs. I wasn't exactly thrilled, but I didn't want to be the coward of the group. So we parked the car down the street, grabbed flashlights, and made our way to the front porch. The moment we stepped inside, the air felt different. It wasn't just dusty and stale, it felt heavy, like the air itself didn't want us there. The wooden floors groaned under our weight as we explored the living room. Old furniture was still there, covered in sheets, like the owners had left in a hurry and never came back. My flashlight flickered as I panned across the walls. That's when I noticed something odd: family portraits. But every single face had been scratched out. Not just once or twice. Deeply gouged, like someone had taken a knife and carved through the glass. We laughed nervously, trying to play it off, but something about those faceless portraits unsettled me. One of my friends dared us to check out the basement. The stairs leading down were half broken, but we managed to get down into the darkness. It smelled like mold and rust, and the air was freezing cold, colder than it should have been in the middle of July. In the corner of the basement was a rocking chair. At first, I thought the shadows were playing tricks on me. But then the chair moved, just a little, back and forth. I shined my flashlight directly on it, my heart pounding. No one was near it. One of my friends shouted, "Stop messing around." But we were all standing together. None of us had touched the chair. We ran back upstairs, laughing nervously again, but the laughter didn't feel real. It was forced, covering up the fact that we were all terrified. We should have left then, but curiosity pushed us further. We climbed the staircase, every step creaking like it might collapse. At the top of the stairs was a long hallway with 3 doors. 2 of them led to empty bedrooms, but the last door was locked. One of my friends, Tyler, kicked it open, and what we saw inside is something I'll never forget. It was a child's bedroom. The wallpaper was faded and peeling, decorated with stars and moons. Toys were still scattered on the floor. But the bed was perfectly made, as if someone had just tucked a child in. And above the bed, scratched into the wall, were the words, "She never left." We froze. None of us spoke. The air grew heavier, almost suffocating. Suddenly, we heard it, the sound of small footsteps running across the hallway. But we were all standing still. Then came the giggle, high-pitched, childlike. It echoed through the house, bouncing off the walls. We bolted out of the room, sprinting down the stairs and out the front door as fast as we could. When we finally reached the car, gasping for air, none of us could speak for a solid minute. But as I glanced back at the house one last time, I swear I saw a small figure standing in the upstairs window, watching us leave. And the scariest part, it was smiling. Some houses don't need bloodstains on the walls or screams in the night to be terrifying. Sometimes it's the silence, the feeling that someone or something is always watching you. This story is about the house I lived in for one summer in the suburbs of London. A house that looked perfect on the outside, but inside, it became the darkest experience of my life. I had just gotten my first job out of college. The pay wasn't great, so I found a cheap place to rent. It was a small two-story townhouse, tucked in a quiet street with neat little gardens. The landlord offered it for half the price of other rentals in the area. That should have been my first red flag. The house looked fine during the day. Freshly painted walls, hardwood floors, and even some old furniture left behind. But at night, it felt different. The air got cold, much colder than it should have. And sometimes, when I turned off the lights, I could hear faint whispers, like someone speaking right behind me. At first, I thought I was just adjusting to living alone. But I soon realized I wasn't alone. The first real incident happened about 2 weeks after moving in. I was in bed, scrolling through my phone, when I heard footsteps upstairs. The problem was, my bedroom was already upstairs. The sound was coming from the attic. Slow, dragging steps across the wooden beams, directly above me. I froze, staring at the ceiling, my heart racing. I told myself it was probably just squirrels or some animal. But then, I heard a thud, like something heavy had fallen, followed by what sounded like a woman's laugh. Soft, but unmistakable. From that night on, things only got worse. Every evening, when I turned off the lights downstairs, I'd catch glimpses of shadows moving along the walls. Not the kind cast by passing cars or headlights. These moved against the light, like they had a mind of their own. Once, while brushing my teeth, I saw a figure in the hallway mirror. It looked like a tall man, standing behind me. But when I spun around, the hallway was empty. I barely slept. Every creak, every whisper made me jump. But the scariest part hadn't even happened yet. One day, while cleaning, I noticed a small door in the hallway closet. It was low, almost hidden, like it led to some kind of crawl space. The lock was rusty, but I managed to force it open. Inside was a narrow staircase, leading down to a tiny, windowless room. The walls were covered in scratch marks, and in the corner of the room, sitting upright against the wall, was a wooden chair. On the chair was a child's doll. Its porcelain face was cracked, one glass eye missing, and pinned to its dress was a note. The note said, "Don't let her out." That night, I couldn't sleep. Every sound in the house seemed louder. At around 3 a.m., I heard the closet door creak open by itself. Then the sound of those slow, dragging footsteps again, but this time, not in the attic. They were coming up the stairs. I stayed completely still, clutching my blanket, listening as the footsteps reached my bedroom door. The door handle slowly turned. And then, the doll. It was sitting in the middle of my room. I swear it hadn't been there before. The last thing I remember is the sound of that same woman's laugh, only this time, it was right next to my ear. I woke up the next morning outside my house, on the porch, with the front door wide open. I never went back inside. I grabbed my things during the day, moved out, and never spoke to the landlord again. To this day, I don't know who her was, or what would have happened if I stayed. Some houses feel wrong the moment you step inside. It's not about what you see, it's about what you feel. The weight in the air, the silence that doesn't feel empty. This story comes from my time visiting family in Massachusetts, where I stayed in an old Victorian house that had been in the family for generations. By the end of the week, I swore I'd never set foot in that place again. It was the summer after my senior year of high school. My parents sent me to stay with my aunt for a couple of weeks. Her house was over 100 years old, a big Victorian-style home with tall windows, winding staircases, and too many rooms to count. At first, I loved it. It felt like stepping back in time. Creaky wooden floors, antique furniture, portraits of relatives I'd never met staring down at me from the walls. But at night, the charm quickly disappeared. From the very first night, I noticed something strange. The house was never completely silent. Even when everyone was asleep, I could hear faint noises, doors creaking, floorboards shifting, and sometimes what sounded like soft humming. One night, around midnight, I went downstairs for a glass of water. On my way back up, I noticed a door halfway down the hallway was slightly open. I hadn't seen anyone go in there before. Curious, I pushed it open. Inside was a small bedroom, untouched for decades. A dusty four-poster bed, lace curtains, and an old rocking chair by the window. On the nightstand was a framed photo of a little girl. She looked about 7 years old, smiling sweetly in a white dress. But something about the photo made me uneasy. Her eyes looked almost too real, like they were still watching. That same night, I woke up to the sound of the rocking chair creaking. Slow, back and forth. I sat up in bed, my heart pounding, straining to hear. Then I heard footsteps in the hallway. Small, light footsteps, like a child's. They stopped right outside my door. I waited, holding my breath, but nothing happened. When I finally got the courage to look, the hallway was empty, but the door to that little girl's room was wide open. I was sure I had closed it. The next night, I had a dream. At least, I think it was a dream. In it, I was standing in that little girl's room. The air was freezing, my breath visible in the dark. The rocking chair moved on its own, and the girl from the photo sat in it, staring at me. She whispered something I couldn't understand. Her lips moved, but the words sounded muffled like they were underwater. Then she stood up, walked toward me, and grabbed my hand. Her skin was ice cold. That's when I jolted awake, sweating, gasping for air. But when I looked down at my hand, it was red, as if someone had been holding it tightly. On my last night in that house, everything escalated. I was lying in bed when I heard the humming again. This time it was louder, clear, a child's voice singing softly right outside my door. The handle began to turn. Slowly, I stared at it, frozen as the door creaked open. And there she was, the little girl from the photo. Her white dress faded, her face pale, her smile unnatural. She stepped into my room, her bare feet silent on the floorboards. She whispered one word. "Stay!" I screamed, turned on the light, and she was gone. The next morning, I packed my bags and left without looking back. When I told my aunt what I'd seen, her face went pale. She told me her younger sister had died in that very room over 50 years ago. A little girl in a white dress. And ever since then, guests always complained of the same thing. The sound of humming, footsteps in the hallway, and the feeling of someone watching from the rocking chair.